They beat her until she couldn't stand, zip-tied her wrists, chained her to a block, and threw her into the middle of the ocean, where the waves would do the rest. No boat, no radio, no chance, just salt, blood, and open water. But what they didn't know, she wasn't just some intel officer. She was a Navy SEAL. And while they sailed off thinking she'd sink and vanish, she fought through the hypothermia, blood loss, and a 12-foot shark, then came back with the people who owned the sea. Now, before we show you how she turned that freighter into a battlefield and made the man who tried to drown her beg for mercy, hit that subscribe button, tap the bell icon, and drop a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from. Because this isn't just survival, it's payback. The sky was black glass, smeared with stars, and the sea didn't move, not in any way a person could feel from the steel deck of a cargo ship. But Elise Ward felt it anyway. She felt it in the roll under her knees, in the salt that clung to her cracked lips, and in the way the air smelled of diesel and something darker. She was on her knees, hands zip-tied behind her back, ankles shackled to a cinder block slick with ocean slime. Barefoot now, one boot had been ripped off in the scuffle. The other lay 10 feet away, useless. They'd spent 2 days trying to break her, asking about routes, schedules, encryption keys, asking who else knew about the shipment. She'd given them nothing, not her clearance level, not her team designation, not even her middle name. So they'd move past questions into something darker. Waterboarding in a storage container, stress positions that made her shoulders scream, sleep deprivation while diesel engines roared inches from her head. Still nothing. That's when they'd decided she was more dangerous alive than useful. Buzzards don't circle water, one of the men muttered behind her. Not a soldier's voice, contract work, Eastern European accent. Paid to do cleanup, not ask questions. Another one lit a cigarette and blew the smoke sideways. She'll be crab meat by dawn. Neither of them used her name. That was the point. Commander Elise Ward, Naval Intelligence, didn't exist on this boat. Didn't exist on any manifest, or any radio frequency, or any page a satellite could read. She'd vanished 2 days ago somewhere between Djibouti and Mombasa. Just like they wanted, except they hadn't expected her to still be breathing. "You sure she ain't tagged?" the first one asked. The second man reached down, grabbed her by the jaw, and twisted her face toward the ship's floodlight. Blood smeared down her temple from a cut above her brow. Her left eye was almost swollen shut. He grunted. "She's clean." They hadn't checked her wetsuit liner, not properly. And even if they had, they wouldn't have known what to look for. The little ridged bump sewn into the seam behind her knee wasn't for comfort. It was a backup blade. Waterproof, ceramic, invisible to metal detectors. But that wouldn't matter if she hit the water wrong. The third man didn't speak at all. He just stepped forward, grabbed the block, and dragged her toward the edge of the deck. Her knees scraped raw over the grating. She didn't fight. Couldn't. Not yet. Eyes half-lidded, chest heaving. She was conserving oxygen, not surrendering. The sea opened up beneath her like a black grave. "Bye-bye, American," the smoker said and kicked the block. She went over without a sound. Water swallowed her whole. The weight dragged her fast, faster than her lungs were ready for. But she didn't panic. She twisted just enough to take the pressure off her ribs and let the block pull her vertical. 10 feet, 20, 30. Light vanished. She opened her eyes, and even in the dark, the muscle memory kicked in. Her fingers moved behind her back, searching for the blade in the seam. Found it, tilted her wrist, began sawing. She wasn't dead, not yet. Not even close. Pressure built behind her eyes as the ocean squeezed down. Her lungs burned, ears popped, and the zip tie bit deep into her wrists with every inch the cinder block dragged her. 35 feet, 40. The dark wasn't quiet. It was alive. Groaning metal from the freighter above, the screech of bubbles against hull plating, the thump of her own heartbeat climbing into her skull. Elise didn't waste energy looking up. That instinct got people killed. All she focused on was the serrated ceramic edge pressed awkwardly to the tie between her hands. She could feel her arms going numb, but the blade was sharp, and training didn't vanish just because you were bleeding. DevGru combat divers had a saying, if you can move a finger, you can still cut your way out. She'd heard it in a pool at Fort Story. 12 feet deep, blindfolded, a concrete weight looped to her belt. Back then, it had sounded dramatic. Now it was doctrine. Her lungs clenched. One more pull, one more scrape, snap. The tie broke. She kicked off the cinder block with both heels and yanked her knees up. The chain tore at her ankles as it sank. Blood bloomed. Her body screamed to inhale. She didn't. Elise kicked again, angled upward, favoring her left side, spinning slightly as the water thinned. Her knife slipped back into its slit. Her fingers instinctively gripped the inside of her belt where a shallow curve meant flotation sleeve. 5 feet from the surface, her hand found it. She yanked once. CO2 hissed. Not a life vest, not visible, just enough buoyancy to keep her above water when the gas hit. She breached the surface like a torpedo, mouth wide, lungs exploding, as she finally dragged in air. The sea was vast and merciless in every direction. No lights, no horizon, no ship. It was gone. She treaded water slow and tight, arms barely moving, blood from her ankles mixed with the salt, stinging deep. One eye refused to open, but the other tracked high, up where the stars still blinked. She didn't panic. Not now. Panic was for people with options. Instead, Elise rotated slowly in the water, using the curve of Orion to orient herself, south by southwest, toward the oil flare she'd seen hours before being captured, still faintly visible, just a vertical shimmer on the water's edge. The GPS ping should have gone out the moment she planted it on the hull. A sticky beacon, magnetic core, rigged to her own failed dead signal. Someone should be listening. If not, then she'd float, burn, and bleed until the ocean took her. But that flare was still blinking. And blinking meant distance. And distance was measurable. Just under 10 nautical miles, if she trusted her angle. She always did. Elise adjusted the float sleeve under her ribs, stripped the cord from her wetsuit's inner seam, and tied it tight around her thigh, slowing the blood loss. She whispered the first of her serum mantras. Pain is noise. Noise is useful. Use it to think. Then she started paddling. The first 30 minutes were manageable. Each slow stroke pushed Elise further from where she'd been thrown, blood from her legs dispersing in a faint trail behind her. The flotation sleeve under her ribs kept her barely above the chop, enough to save strength. She moved with the current, not against it, an old diver's trick. But the temperature was dropping. Her fingers curled slowly without her meaning them to. Her teeth clenched involuntarily. Every now and then, she'd blink at the flare in the distance, still there, still vertical, and mutter, 3 more strokes, then breathe. She was halfway through her 7th interval when her body started doing the math for her. Core temperature dropping, blood loss steady but not critical, dehydration setting in despite the flotation, keeping her energy expenditure low. She had maybe 4 hours before hypothermia made the decision for her. Maybe 6 if she was lucky. The flare was still 3 miles out, maybe more. She did the calculation twice, then a third time, hoping the numbers would change. They didn't. 70% chance she wouldn't make it. She kept paddling anyway. Then the water changed. Cool. Then colder. Then suddenly wrong. There was a stillness beneath her that didn't match the rest of the ocean. She stopped paddling, let herself drift. Silence. A low tug beneath her foot, then a bump. Not a current. Not debris. A presence. Elise turned slowly in the water, hands flat. The left side of her body was half numb, but her eyes were alert now, scanning every faint shimmer under the surface. Then it appeared, 12 feet of muscle and silence, oceanic white tip, blunt nose, wide fins, a survivor's shark. The kind that hunted shipwrecks and trailed bleeding mammals for hours. It circled her once at a distance, then disappeared. Seconds passed, then it came back, closer. Elise didn't panic, didn't move. She remembered the voice of her seer instructor. Stay vertical, make eye contact. You're not prey unless you act like it. The shark veered right, then curved back, closer again. Elise unstrapped the dive knife from her thigh. Her hands were stiff, grip weak. She switched to reverse grip and floated taller in the water, kicking once to make herself seem bigger. The shark disappeared again, then shot up fast. Elise flared her left arm wide, turned just enough to lead it past her. The shark grazed her leg, just enough to taste blood. It rolled beneath her and looped around again. She let out a hiss, not fear, timing. She pivoted as it lunged again, this time more direct, more committed. She struck first, knife forward, straight into the gill slit as it passed. The shark thrashed. Its flank collided with her hip. The blade tore free. Salt water filled her mouth as she was shoved half under, but she didn't let go of the knife. She surfaced, coughing hard, chest burning, and faced the direction it had gone. It circled again, slower, then peeled off. The decoy flare she clipped to her belt ignited underwater. Just a flash of light and heat trailing away. The shark followed. Elise watched the ocean settle, heart pounding. She'd won, not by strength, by discipline. She reset her orientation to the flare and started paddling again. Dawn broke in thin slashes of pale gold smeared across the horizon like someone had torn the sky open with a dull blade. The water shimmered now, deceptively calm, cold, in a way that got behind her bones. Elise squinted into the light, lips cracked, jaw tight. Her breath came in ragged pulls. Stroke, pause, float, repeat. She was beginning to drift west of the flare, current pulling her sideways, but she kept recalibrating. Star to port, wind to stern, one eye swollen shut, the other still watching. And then she heard it, a low hum. At first just a ripple under the wind, then thicker, fuller, rotors. She craned her neck, forcing herself upright against the flotation sleeve. A black dot cut across the sky, silhouetted against the early sun. Not commercial, no contrails, angular wings, twin engines, MH-60 Seahawk, Navy Bird, too high, too fast. Elise reached for her belt. Her fingers could barely close anymore, swollen, stinging, white at the knuckles. But she still had her fallback mirror, clipped to a retractable cord. She yanked it free, angled it toward the sky, and caught the sun. Flash, pause, flash, flash. 3 seconds, repeat. She kept flashing. Inside the Seahawk's cockpit, the sensor operator tilted his head. We just passed a glint off the water. 11 o'clock low. The pilot leaned forward. Reflection? Too rhythmic to be wave scatter. Could be a decoy, the crew chief muttered. They've used mirrors on buoys before, draw us in. No signal buoy in these waters, said the co-pilot. And we've got a heat bloom, barely human temp, drifting off thermal scan. The pilot exhaled through his nose. Not a decoy. Decoys don't bleed. He banked the bird hard left, dropping altitude fast. Back on the surface, Elise was starting to fade. Her shoulders ached like they'd been nailed in place. Her lips moved, but she wasn't saying anything now, just moving, breath. She still flashed the mirror, even when she had to rest against her chest. Then the wind shifted. It hit her like a slap, hard, fast, warm and dry, rotor wash. She looked up. The MH-60 was circling now, nose tilted, side door open. A diver dropped from the rail like a shadow with fins. Another followed. She let her head fall back and closed her eyes. For the first time since they threw her off that boat, she stopped kicking, and the water held her. Hands grabbed her seconds later, tactical gloves, strong and certain. A voice near her ear shouted over the churned spray, U.S. Navy, you're safe. She opened her eye, whispered one word, tracked vessel. The diver froze mid-lift. Elise Ward? He asked. She nodded weakly. Beacon was real. Then her body finally gave out. But not her mind. That part stayed awake, waiting for the next move. Elise didn't remember the lift. One moment, cold hands braced her neck. The next, the ocean dropped away beneath her, and the wind hit like a wall. Rotor wash blasted seawater across her face as she rose through the spray, strapped into a rescue sling, body limp, boots trailing, blood dripping steadily from her thigh into the void below. The MH-60 skids caught sunlight just as she cleared the rail. A gloved hand reached out and hauled her in, fast but careful. Get her down, now! The The cabin was hot and loud, voices overlapping, equipment clanking, doors rattling. She hit the deck on a stretcher, and someone immediately pressed a thermal blanket to her chest. Another voice called for vitals. BP's tanking. 82 over 43. She's freezing from the inside out. Run IV. Saline with heat packs. The medic worked fast, ripping open gauze, cutting through her vest, peeling it back to reveal her torso. Her skin was pale gray, marked with pressure lines from the flotation gear. He tapped her cheek gently. Ma'am, stay with me. What's your name? She turned her head, barely. Her lips moved. No sound. He leaned closer. Elise, Ward, Commander. The words came out like air through crushed glass. Another medic leaned in. We need to divert back. She's not gonna make... No, she croaked. Turn around. Turn around where? She lifted her hand, slow, shaking, toward the eastern horizon. Freighter, weapons, hidden manifest, 2 hours max. The cabin fell still. The lead crewman stepped forward. You have proof? Pinged it. Before they caught me. Tracking beacon, lower hull, port side. Someone at the sensor station spun his screen. She's right, we're still getting weak ping telemetry. Drifted a bit, but the signature's stable. The pilot's voice cut in through headset comms. Say again, what beacon? Classified Navy tracker, the sensor operator said. Passive, magnetic, not standard issue. She must have planted it before exfil went bad. Elise fought to sit up, medic's hand stopping her short. They think I'm gone. They won't run. If you move now... The crew chief didn't wait. Get me channel to Seahorse Command. Task Unit 24.5. Tell them we've got a live intel asset in critical condition requesting intercept authority. The medic pressed a heat pack against her collarbone. That's not how this works. You need fluids, antibiotics, evac. You're septic. She locked eyes with him. I said, turn the bird. He hesitated, then keyed his mic. Pilot, she's echo clearance. We're turning. The helicopter banked hard east, slicing across the waves with sudden purpose. Inside, Elise closed her eyes, but just for a second. Then she opened them again and reached for the nearest crewman. Give me a pen. He looked confused. She pointed at the back of her hand. Rendezvous coordinates. Before I forget, the inside of the Seahawk smelled like heat packs, iodine, and sweat. Elise was laid out across the portside bench, torso wrapped in compression foil, IV line running from her arm to a swaying bag of warm saline. Her right leg was splinted with foam brackets, blood still soaking through the thigh dressing. A medic hovered nearby, adjusting the drip rate every 30 seconds. Keep her flat, he muttered. She stands, she crashes. But Elise wasn't listening. She was watching the sensor feed on the crew chief's tablet, heat map overlay bouncing slightly with the bird's motion. A blinking red dot sat inside the shadow of a container ship hull. Static telemetry. Signal weak, but steady. That's the ping. Her ping. You're tracking it live? She asked, voice hoarse through cracked lips. The crew chief nodded. Barely. Looks like a modified freighter. No call sign, no cargo log, no transponder. Might be flagged as medical aid transport. Elise coughed once, winced. They're using it to smuggle weapons. American pattern crates. Navy surplus. I saw serial scratched off. The pilot's voice cut in over internal comms. We're rerouting south by southeast. 2 hours to intercept. No rules of engagement issued. Then get them issued, Elise said. This isn't a suspicion. This is evidence. The crew looked at each other, then at her. You're not just an analyst, are you? One asked. Naval Intelligence Liaison, DevGru affiliate, Echo 6 clearance. She didn't blink. That gives me temporary field authority when transmission is compromised. The sensor operator hesitated. We're not your team. Right now, she said, pointing at the pulsing dot. You are. The comm specialist relayed the request to Joint Command. Elise kept speaking, now to the pilot directly. Tell them the beacon's on the portside hull, just below waterline. And if it stops transmitting, the ship submerged the device. That's your kill switch. You really planted it? The medic asked. Even after they caught you? I planted it because they caught me. She reached for the medic's pen and the back of her own hand. Scribbled fast, numbers overlapping. Rendezvous coordinates. she said. They're heading for a private dock in Puntland. Security is mercenary run. If you wait until they dock, they'll offload before we can build probable cause. Then we intercept en route? No, she said. You don't intercept. You follow until backup arrives. If they divert course or drop anchor, I'll confirm the dock pattern. The comms officer turned from his headset. Command says stand by. They're looping in a submersible unit for Blacken intercept. Closest naval asset is already submerged. USS Colorado. They're an hour from reposition. Elise sat up slowly, vision swimming. I'm going on that sub. You're barely alive, the medic snapped. She met his eyes. Then you better keep me that way. The USS Colorado surfaced under moonlight, barely breaking the skin of the ocean. From above, it looked like a shadow trying to breathe. Silent, predatory, sleek as a whale with a purpose. The Seahawk circled once, then hovered low. Rotor wash rippled at the surface in concentric waves as a stretcher line lowered from the side hatch. Elise Ward came down slow. Not like cargo, like authority. Two SEALs in black dry suits met her on the midship deck. No words, just nods and firm grips. They moved her below decks through a narrow hatch, down a ladder, and into the glowing heartbeat of the sub. The control room was low-ceilinged and warm, lined with green-lit consoles and personnel wearing headsets and calm faces. A junior officer handed her a towel and a packet of electrolyte paste. She ripped it open and swallowed without blinking. Ma'am, the XO began, we were briefed en route. You've got the ping data and target telemetry? Live, she rasped, tapping the tablet. Freighters rerouting slightly, west by 3 degrees. Still holding course toward Puntland, but skirting the original shipping lane. Someone's tipped them off. Wasn't us, the SEAL team leader said, stepping forward. He was stocky, close-cropped, eyes like flint. Commander Rafe Morgan, Task Unit 24.5. We've got 6 men, full SDV capability, and 2 underwater ingress options. You've run this route before? Elise asked. 3 times. Somali coast is loose netting. Ports leak. What do you need? She didn't hesitate. SDV insert at 1.5 nautical. East approach. They'll expect boarding from starboard if they spot us. You're riding in? He asked, a trace of disbelief. She nodded. I planted the beacon. I have visual layout. They move containers to block upper access decks. I can walk you through that blind. The commander looked at the medic beside her. She'll hold, the medic said, but not for long. Elise glanced around the planning table. A 3D topo overlay of the freighter hovered above a projector pad. Red squares marked containers. A yellow dot pulsed low near the hull. They've got about 90 minutes before landfall. After that, it's deniable cargo, washed, buried, sold to people who don't file receipts. And we've got one shot, Rafe muttered. Elise reached for the digital stylus and marked 3 red X's on the schematic. Entry ladders here, dry access to interrogation hold here. Hostiles typically sleep forward compartments. Weapons cache mid-deck. Take them quiet. We only get 1 clean hit. One of the SEALs spoke up. How many hostiles we looking at? Confirmed 8 during my detention. Could be 10 now if they rotated crew at the last port. Most are contractors. Balkan, maybe Russian. Former military, but sloppy. They rely on isolation, not training. She zoomed in on the engine room. Their weak point is here. No backup generator. You cut main power. They're blind and deaf for 45 seconds before the emergency kicks in. That's your window. Rafe studied her face. You counted seconds while they were beating you? I counted everything. A junior tech passed her a comms earpiece. Encrypted channel. You'll be Vulture 6 for the operation. Elise clipped it on. It fits. Rafe gave her a look. You don't owe them this. She met his gaze, eyes like broken glass soldered back together. They threw me into the ocean, she said. Now I'm bringing the tide. The water swallowed them, without a sound. Twin SDVs, SEAL delivery vehicles, slipped out from the dorsal hatch of the USS Colorado like shadows detaching from a larger one. Low profile, battery silent, barely visible even on infrared. Each held 3 men and 1 mission. Elise was crammed in the rear hull of the lead SDV, chest pressed to her knees, comms snug under her hood, rifle secured across her lap. Her body hurt like fire wrapped in ice, but her hands were steady. 60 meters to intercept point, came Rafe's voice over comms. No sonar pings. Freighter's running blind. She blinked her eyes open inside the mask. The viewport showed almost nothing, just bioluminescent flecks and the faint pulse of the beacon she'd planted, now glowing like a heartbeat in the dark. Her beacon. She keyed her mic. Portside intake vents, midline hull seam. They lead to ballast compartments, unlocked from inside last I saw. The SDV angled up, arcing silently toward the underside of the freighter now looming above them like a blackened wall. Roger, Rafe said. Stacking left. The SEALs detached first, 4 frogmen disappearing upward like ghosts. Elise followed slower, her body protesting every kick. But she kept going. She reached the vent grill and felt for the latch, a manual lever behind a rusted panel, still loose, still unchained. She popped it. Water surged past her as she squeezed through the narrow duct, elbows and knees scraping rusted bolts. Inside the ballast cavity, it was quiet again. Dead metal, stale water, the soft chime of her breathing in the mask. The SEALs regrouped. No words. They moved like one organism, over, around, through narrow channels, until they reached the internal maintenance ladder. Elise signaled once and started climbing. Above them, the hatch to the engine room loomed. She placed her hand on the latch, counted to 5, then turned. The metal lifted with a soft gasp. They emerged into heat and noise, thrum of diesel, rattle of a misaligned fan belt, no footsteps, no alarm. Elise pointed to the blind corner behind the backup generator. Rafe moved. His team followed. 2 guards on rotation, she whispered, usually sleep between shifts. Their cabins through that bulkhead, far side of the galley. He nodded, tapped his wrist. 30 minutes until dock. They moved. Past stacked crates with falsified medical labels, past pallets of grain sacks hiding steel ammunition tubes. Every twist matched what she remembered. Every corner she'd once been dragged around was now approached on her terms. Then they reached the stairwell to the upper deck. Elise took point. Not fast, not loud, just steady. They were inside now, past steel, past noise, past excuses. And there were men above who still thought she was dead. She tapped her mic. Vulture 6, in position. Permission to breach. Rafe's voice came back without hesitation. Breach granted. And just like that, the hunted became the hunter. The stairwell groaned as they climbed. Slow, precise, 2 boots per step. Above, the steel door to the main deck rattled lightly in the wind. The ship was moving fast now, churning toward its fake port manifest like nothing was wrong. But everything was wrong. Elise pressed herself against the bulkhead beside the door and tapped twice on her comms. Alpha team breaching starboard. Bravo, hold for perimeter sweep. Confirm cargo integrity. Live rounds only if engaged. Copy, Vulture 6, Rafe's voice replied. Alpha stacked. Go in 3. She counted in her head. 1, 2, 3. The door blew inward. Seals surged through like a tide. Suppressed bursts. Sharp commands. No screams. The first 2 guards dropped before they could even lift their weapons. Another one tried to run, straight into Bravo's suppressive fire from the upper ladder well. Clean. Fast. Elise stepped onto the deck behind them, rifle angled low but ready. Her right leg throbbed with every step, but she didn't limp. Couldn't. Not for this. The freighter's bridge came into view. A rusted tower with frosted glass. 2 shadows moved behind the console. One ran, one didn't. She keyed her mic. I want the bridge. Don't fire unless fired on. Rafe nodded once and peeled off. His team took the hold. Elise walked forward alone, weapon tucked tight to her shoulder, wind clawing at her hood. The door was already cracked open. She stepped through it, and there he was, the same contractor who'd spit on her boots, who'd ordered the block chain to her ankles. Same face, same smugness, only now it cracked. You? He stammered. She didn't aim, Didn't speak. She just looked at him. He reached for the console. Maybe a panic button. Maybe nothing. She was faster. A boot to the wrist. Then the muzzle of her rifle against his chest. I told them not to shoot you, she said, voice low, words barely carrying over the hum of the ship. His mouth worked like he wanted to beg. She lowered the weapon slightly, just enough for him to think he had room to talk. Then she cuffed him. Hard plastic zip tie. No ceremony. Rafe, she said into comms. Primary target secured. Bring the manifest scanner up here. He's going to help us label every stolen round. She forced the contractor into a chair, tied his ankles to the base. You should have shot me, she said. He didn't reply, didn't even look at her, but she saw it. The tremor in his fingers, the tiny shiver in his jaw, the understanding. Outside, the SEALs moved like a machine, bagging crates, cataloging drives, securing the helipad for extract. The sun breached the ocean's edge, and Elise Ward stood on a ship they tried to erase her from. Rafe climbed the bridge steps, nodded once. What's the call? She looked out over the sea, wind in her face, blood still dry to her temple. Sail it home. Could you survive being thrown into the open ocean, bleeding, with a shark circling beneath you? Would you still have the strength to lead a strike against the very people who left you to die? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story hit harder than you expected, go ahead and tap the like button, subscribe, and ring that bell so you never miss a mission like this. Share this video with someone who still believes Navy SEALs only fight on land. And when you're done here, one of our next stories is already waiting for you on screen. I'll see you there, same time tomorrow.